Little gay people in phone. Hello, I'm Nia, also known as @VitNia, and some of y'all about to be real mad at me. Or may already be, based on how part 1 of this series was received. Yikes. But if you're feeling that, hold that feeling really tight. We're gonna tap into it, explore it, put it to use. On me. Because that feeling is actually the thesis of today's video. Ooh. Intrigue. In my last video and the first part of the series, I explored the ways parasociality, desensitization, infighting, and respectability politics manifest online into cyclical discourses that create tension and division between groups of people with shared interests and common enemies. And I prompted my viewers to look inward and investigate places within themselves that may reveal certain internal projections or propagate discourses that distract us from productivity and tangible progress as a collective. Or something like that. But that's a whole bunch of words, right? Theory and praxis are fun and cool, but action is all there really is at the end of the day. So today, in a similar vein, I want to talk about ego, anger, outrage, and the complex of morality, as well as its real-life consequences in my life and potentially in yours. I don't know how y'all are going to feel about this series, especially with the titles. Like, this is basically the Nia Where You Going with this show, and I should have just titled this Lesbians Walk With Me, but, like, walk with me. We're going somewhere. You may hate it, but I promise. Firstly, I want to lay groundwork for a phenomenon I've seen running rampant in queer circles and potentially just like in life in general. Jury's still out. Something I've coined as lesbian ugly duckling syndrome, or for the sake of brevity, LUDS. Google defines traditional ugly duckling syndrome as a scenario in which a person who is perceived by themselves or others as not physically attractive in their formative years grows into a conventionally attractive individual. But I think the prevalence of this phenomenon in a queer context has beget an evolution wherein that attractiveness does not simply make someone naive to how they're perceived or bring a level of humility or humor to a hot person. Quite the opposite. There is a through line between growing up feeling like you're unattractive and growing up queer, whether closeted or otherwise. In adolescent formative years, you're learning about dating and first kisses and love, and to the early Gen Zers watching, hoping your crush gives you a good TBation rate or commits to upkeeping your Snapchat streak. And all of that forces you to grapple with your own desirability. It colors the way you perceive yourself. During these formative years, I was out as bisexual, but it didn't really matter, to be honest, because I am Black. And I grew up in a predominantly white town, fun fact. My high school graduating class had maybe 6 Black girls, and that's including mixed girls, and 0 Black boys. So no one really cared I was like ambiguously, allegedly bisexual because no one was checking for me anyways. What's that meme? How you bisexual and by yourself? Yeah, how I miss 2016. But in that vein, obviously I've met plenty of people who were the token out student in their school or outed by their peers or bullied for being perceived as queer. These narratives are all pretty commonplace, especially when we're thinking of coming of age in the 2010s. And speaking from my personal experience and the stories I've observed from the people in my community, the next chapter I often hear is typically, you leave your hometown, move to the big city, find your people, find yourself, and party and be gay. Happily ever after, right? No. Unfortunately not, because not to be an armchair psychiatrist, but it's almost like our inner children live within us, and adulthood gives the experiences and desires we clung to in our youth a space to be exercised. Thus, what I've observed as a rising epidemic in places with lively, vibrant lesbian scenes is this air of hierarchical toxicity that I've heard many of my friends describe as high school. In simplest terms, lesbian ugly duckling syndrome is where, theoretically, people who are not conventionally cool or hot or sought after in their formative years get hot, or more so find themselves in spaces where they're surrounded by more people who are attracted to them, as friends, lovers, whatever, and in turn, use their hotness for evil. And I use evil, if you can't tell by this point, in a very sardonic, tongue-in-cheek way to indicate something flawed, something malicious, something sinister, or even something that just makes you go, oh, that's not. And while my most popular series is titled The Internet's Evilest, wherein I explore some really sinister and abhorrent accusations of harm, I also refer to myself as kinda evil in my Instagram bio, because as much as I find it integral to explore and discuss and disseminate harm, I do so from a purview that acknowledges we all commit harm, or at least we all have the power to, in different ways to different degrees, but harm does not discriminate whether you are victim or perpetrator. Famously, I have not met every person ever, but I'd gander we all have done things we are not proud of, or never thought we'd do. Maybe I'm telling on myself, but I sure as hell have, but I'm getting ahead of myself. To circle back to LUDs, I think there is a distinction to be made about people who didn't feel beautiful or cool in their youth, who commit to self-love and radical confidence and showing up loudly and fully in their adulthood, whose dreams and goals and relationships are all rooted in an acknowledgement and appreciation and respect for fulfilling the wishes of their inner child. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I wish everyone did that, and I'm damn sure trying to. The issue emerges where there's a dissonance between confidence and arrogance, visibility and superiority, connection and, frankly, clout chasing, where something unkept internally becomes externalized in a way that makes people, fuck the big words, mean, fake, competitive, judgmental, cruel, deeply selfish. And I don't think people realize how transparent this can be if you know how to spot it. Like at this point, when I get that smell, I don't even judge the person unless they're doing something really grotesque. I just let it rock because I am not God, and even more so than that, I'm not a cop. And I get it. We're young and turnt. Go behind crazy. You really don't have to start doing shadow work until like 27-ish, in my opinion. But as someone who always just wanted a place, who never felt like they fit in or whatever, I entered the New York City queer scene at 17, genuinely seeking belonging and community. And I can sniff out pretty quickly when what people are seeking is actually approval, validation, or power. And I'm sure plenty of people of any identity or orientation can relate to this. It doesn't just exist in a queer context. Look at like the cast of Love is Blind. When you lock a whole bunch of emotionally aware people with a shared goal in a house for 10 days and the potential for Instagram fame, it starts to feel like high school. These grown people are sharing screenshots with T-channels. People are fucking each other's exes, stuffing receipts in their bras and sneaking it into the reunion special. But whatever. My point is, humanity is messy. People like to gossip, and I wish more people could just be honest about that. Like, it's legal. Jesus, for now. The distinction I found in queer and specifically lesbian spaces is that these two complexes, the desire to rectify feelings of inadequacy from youth and our cultural propensity for mess, become deeply toxic because of the way our community holds, weaponizes, and discusses morality. This touches on what I talked about in the beginning of part 1, how we, queer people, the left, whatever you want, talk and think and don't often actionably do anything. Or at least the action we do take is condemnation, think piece, Twitter thread. And there is validity to that. I mean, look at me. I love talking and thinking. Dead horses literally hate to see me coming. In this section of the internet, we have the language and the means to investigate and analyze things in incredibly detailed and idiosyncratic ways, to identify harm and social norms. I talk about this in my Love Island video, but this is rooted in the concept that the people of a marginalized group inherently have an understanding of the rules and norms common within the majority group oppressing them. For example, Black people have a somewhat innate understanding of whiteness, how it functions, what it requires of you, etc., that white people don't innately have when it comes to Black people. Thus, queer people, lesbians, trans people, this is a broadly applicable topic, don't have to get a shiny liberal arts degree to have a pretty fucking vivid understanding of systems of oppression, dog whistles, pseudo-politics, and how prejudice functions. Often, we, have to survive. So now we have these three things at play, right? LUDs, feelings of inadequacy, being projected outward in at times toxic ways, an innate understanding of a dominant oppressive culture, as well as an emotional and social stake in resisting it, as well as being admittedly or not, messy fucking bitches. And what that often breeds altogether is, what's the word? Let me look at my thesaurus. Mess. It breeds a lot of mess. And, look at this channel. That complex comes into play in, most of my videos. That's the quiet part beneath it all. But for the first time on this channel, I'm not really talking about this within the context of the internet as the landscape. In this video, the people, you, me, we are the landscape. And the internet is a tool. And so is nightlife, and community building spaces, and the scene. And again, this is not a critique of, cancel culture necessarily, and suggesting we need more grace in instances of, egregious, abhorrent, or abusive harm. And where you draw those lines and situations is up to you, obviously. I'm making, a super general point here, and it's not one size fits all. But I do think we're getting to a point where we need to be aware that this is a thing. And it's getting to a point. I'm seeing this faux moral superiority and virtue signaling being weaponized in ways I find wholly unproductive, as well as antithetical to a lot of the same values people get on their woke soapbox saying they stand for in the first place.
My name is Ava Milioni. I'm a writer, journalist, and the founder and editor-in-chief of Ebony Tomatoes, which is Black and queer literary magazine.
I guess at this point, a lot of people, you guys know Ava. Ava was the featured guest in my podcast episode Glass Closet, Why Are Gay Spaces So Racist? Is the most viewed video on my channel. If you haven't watched it, you should watch it. It was really brilliant, and is a thinker and a creative that I've long admired and been so blessed to know personally. And Ebony Tomatoes Collective is an incredibly impactful initiative that I think creates space for Black a lot of queer writers and our stories and how Black thought is evolved in today's schema. Ava's also just told me what schema meant. So I would love to hear more about what the process was like with Ebony Tomatoes as you are kind of getting to a point where things may be shifting.
Yeah, so I started Ebony Tomatoes in college. I found myself just wanting to be in community with more Black writers who like could really judge my work off of like the actual merit of what I was writing, as opposed to some like political or racial or identity-based critiques that didn't align with me, because that's what I was going through in my film classes, where like I would write a script about like Black Panther lesbians and I thought it was really cool, and then my professor would be like, well, why didn't they face any like microaggressions in this universe? Like,
oh.
And also coming from like a working class background, which is like not the case for a lot of NYU film students that I was in community with at that time. So I was just feeling a little bit fed up and not seen. So I was like, I just want to bring like the girlies together. You know what I mean? Exactly. Just really creating like a loving space for Black storytellers was really our main goal, and is still my goal now. We've published 25 issues.
Wow.
Over 4 years. We are made up of a volunteer team right now of around 8 people. But there's been a lot of different people who have come in and out of Ebony Tomatoes as volunteers and have like contributed to the mission. And we've hosted a lot of community events. We've hosted launch parties at Henrietta Hudson. We've hosted Black film screenings at the Bush. Shout out to Cheyenne for hosting that one. We've done a lot of events with Boyfriend Co-op and like have a really good like working relationship with a lot of lesbian and queer bars around the city. We've been distributed in McNally Jackson and Human Relations and other bookstores across Brooklyn and New York. Out of all the co-founders that have like been a part of it, I'm like the only and like original co-founder who's still a part of it. And that means I wear a lot of different hats, and a large majority of my work, I would say probably 95%, is completely volunteer, unpaid. There are like editors and people who are working on socials that are helping me with that. But over the past 4 years, I think I've done like a lot of the brunt work of Ebony Tomatoes and keeping it organized and making sure that everyone feels represented and happy and safe in these spaces. And it's a lot of pressure. And as Ebony Tomatoes has become bigger, like now we have almost 10K on Instagram, which is great. But it's not just a small group of people anymore. There's a lot of intricacies that a lot of the people who are just seeing our Instagram and seeing, okay, we have 9,000 followers, are not really engaging with on a deeper, more personal level. Mm-hmm. And I think being the main person who's like posting for Ebony Tomatoes and doing TikToks and doing interviews for Ebony Tomatoes, I feel like I've been held to a really high standard as far as what I'm expected to do and what I'm expected to give to the community. I would not say that's the case for the majority of the writers and artists that we work with. Like, I would say like 90% of the people are so kind and understanding, are just like, hey, I love what you're doing. Thanks for doing this. And I'm like, thank you for being here, because, you know, there's no space without the people who make that space and who come in to support us. So that's been really empowering. And there's a lot of Ebony Tomatoes events that I come away from feeling like my cup is full. I feel really fulfilled. And I'm really honored to be in a position where I can do this work and create stages and, you know, pages for Black writers to be uplifted. And at the same time, I think there's been instances both as in my personal life, like as a writer and as a journalist, and being like the editor-in-chief of Ebony Tomatoes, where I'm seeing some troubling trends. I think that people have begun to interact with me as a brand and as like a PR team and not as a person. And I think that over time and over the years, combined with the lack of like financial support that I receive and like the collective receives, have felt like I've been on the receiving end of a lot of scrutiny and a lot of really high standards that have made me feel distrustful and a little anxious of the community that I'm seeking to serve. Obviously, as a person, I'm capable of harm. I remember like Anu posted that on Substack where they were like, all of us are capable of harm. And so that means like, I definitely want to know when I've done something that's hurt someone, or like when I'm deserving of critique or can do things better. Like that is not what I'm saying at all, even though it's hard to hear. I feel like there's been a culture shift where any like criticism or call out is being treated as a form of punishment and not a form of conversation and genuine growth. Instead of treating me like a person who's capable of making mistakes and having room to improve, just reaching out personally and being like, hey,
with grace
and, you know, doing that because as a person, I am deserving of critique and accountability, but that also means I'm deserving of respect and deserving of grace and being treated, you know, given just some faith to converse and to actually have a dialogue. And I think more often than not, when people have some issue with the things that I've done as like a writer or being a part of Ebony Tomatoes, it ends up being like a public call out or even just a really definitive kind of retaliatory DM or email, as opposed to a conversation which can actually help me understand what I can do better.
I also think in your case, there's a cruel irony in that your work seeks to speak and to create space for dialogue and this academic, theoretical, you know, personal exploration of Blackness and via literature. And then you have to walk on these eggshells or like kind of peruse these lines to figure out what's actually being said. We have so much access to language and we have such a strong overview and sense of like what's wrong with the world and access to the words to describe it. And sometimes it's like, damn, we could actually email the person who responds to the comment before we make the think piece. Like it doesn't, like maybe that's step one. Like now that we're allowed to do think pieces, people can't stop. Me too. But then again.
Same. No, I completely agree. And I think a lot of that has to do with the form of the internet as a tool, like you said. The internet being a tool to disseminate information and as a public spectacle. I think as Black people and as queer people, we've experienced so much collective trauma and we've been hurt so much and we have our defenses up and we feel the necessary need to protect ourselves. And I think at a certain point, the issue comes in where we actually haven't gained the tools or the discernment to understand what actually needs protecting from and what needs like conversation and engagement and more holistic forms of accountability. So I think what ends up happening is like we're in a space now as like Black, queer, marginalized people where a lot of things are being stripped away from us. Like goodbye woke, goodbye DEI, like goodbye like a lot of like the resources that were just coming up that were able to support us. But the one thing that remains is the internet and access to these public forums. And that is a form of power too. And it's one of the few that we have remaining to us as marginalized people. But I think the issue comes in where we seek to rectify interpersonal issues or even like small community issues on the internet. And now we're using internet discourse and think pieces and comment sections as a form to police, survey, and control other people in our communities. I don't know what everyone's intentions are. I'm sure a lot of people do have good intentions of wanting to hold people accountable. But I think a lot of that mirrors the very same systems that have oppressed us for centuries. And I don't think as much as we parrot words like community, restorative justice, all of these like, you know, these language politics, I think that we still don't have the actual mentorship and the actual guidance and the actual support to understand what that looks like outside of clicks and comments and these tools that are not serving us. Yeah.
But I also think it's interesting the ways that they can feel like we are and how like that's also a facet of the dominant culture, the oppressor, to feel like we're doing praxis, feel like we're doing something productive when we have these discourses, when we're reinforcing, you know, we're kind of trapping ourselves in the glass box. Having this conversation is like hella meta. I'm curious how you feel like the internet, in the way we're describing it, within the community, our community that we're talking about, with the language we have, with the trauma we have, can begin to have this conversation in good faith. Like, is that naive?
I don't think it is. I think it's kind of one of our only ways out. I think a lot of it is just giving people grace and kind of disconnecting what idea you might have of someone based off of things that you've heard or seen online, because everything that's online is a projection. It's not the real thing. Like the people watching our faces right now, they're not watching us. They're watching us on the internet. Like even before I came in, I was like, I was telling Seeley, my girlfriend, I was like, I don't know like how people are gonna respond to things that I say. Like what if people are mad at me? And Seeley was like, they're not gonna be mad at you. They're gonna be mad at the you on the internet that they are seeing.
Wow.
And those are two different things. right? So like for me, I've kind of been struggling with this kind of dissociative selfhood because I feel like I am in the space where I feel like I'm too many different people and there's too many different versions of myself in people's minds. Because on one hand, I'm like, people will come up to me like, oh my gosh, I love the work that you're doing for Ebony Tomatoes. It's awesome. And, you know, people see me as that. And then there'll be someone who is like, sent me a really mean email or DM and saying that I'm doing something wrong or, you know, with no recourse. And then I'm also on the internet as like a writer and like doing video essays. And then I've had like separate drama with that on the internet, of people who have spread things about me that are untrue. And then there's also the me that I know and the me that is myself. And it's becoming more and more difficult with this fracturing of selves to navigate the world being like, okay, who am I? Like, what are people seeing? And there's just too many versions of myself that exist in my own mind because of the shit that I've dealt with on the internet. And so I think like really, that was a tangent to say. I think
that was incredibly well put, and I felt that deeply.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I'm sure, like, you know, it's hard because it's like a lot of us, you know, who are doing these think pieces and doing this, we're coming from a place of wanting to be heard and wanting, you know, to gain power through the stories that we tell, which I think is so important. But I think it can also be distorted and perverted in some ways by how many different communication channels that we have and how little we understand that form. Like Google, Instagram, Meta, that we don't understand. We didn't read the terms of fucking conditions. We don't understand how they work. And that causes a breakdown of communication. So I think to begin this work, we really need to understand that at the end of the day, we are people. And as humans, we are flawed. And I think a big issue that we're having right now is that we don't have a shared understanding of what words mean. A lot of the words we use don't have the same definition, like Malavika's piece, you know, the whole thing was like low-key I chose to be a lesbian, and it caused death threats and insanity because within the lesbian community, there's not a consensus about what lesbian means. For me personally, I'm like Black and Puerto Rican and Italian, mixed, growing up. And still now, I've identified as Black. Like, I've acknowledged that I'm biracial, but I've also said, you know, I'm Black. But then I'll go on threads and people are like, bumbleclat, like, are biracial people Black? Right. And then people will be like, no, you're not Black, you're biracial. And so that's also caused infighting within the Black community because there's not a shared definition of what Blackness actually is. Does there have to be? Maybe not. Is it naive to think that there might one day be? Perhaps. But I think that like we're not understanding that our definitions of things are not the only definition that exists. And when we bring that into interpersonal issues, I think it becomes, we lose before we begin because we're talking from different
purviews.
Yeah.
And I think those examples are actually incredibly similar in that vein. I think obviously the bisexual, biracial, like, right, like the bisexual and the mixed people, we get it. Like, but it's interesting because those discourses are all born out of this fear and anger of like, well, my experience is that I've been oppressed on these lines and you have not been oppressed on these lines to the same degree that I have. So we cannot be talking about the same thing. We cannot be experiencing the same thing. And that is real. And there's a lot of nuance there. Honestly, and those are conversations that happen on Twitter, luckily every day. Like we'll figure it out one day. But it's interesting because it really doesn't do anything, you know, and it's such a defense mechanism and it's so valid. Like it's so natural and valid to feel defensive and angry and scared because like people be dying, you know, like it's really serious. But it also is like this gatekeeping and defensiveness. And I won't even say it's unnecessary. I think it's natural. I don't think it's productive. And I think that like it's just so the same master's tools, master's house to me. Like it's so like we're going to keep running this into the ground and beating each other up with sticks to figure out who is most oppressed when we know who's most oppressed and we're all actually still oppressed. Where are we pointing the guns anymore? And I want to ask you, what do you want? Like, how do you want people to see you?
I want people online to see me as my friends see me. Someone who has flaws and is silly and is not always, you know, is not always like, you know, not perfect. Not perfect, but sees me as someone who is thoughtful and who cares and does have good intentions. And I think a lot of times the issue that I've had on the internet is that people will come at me, no prior conversation, nothing, just assuming that I'm meant to do A, B, C, and D, not understanding my situation, not understanding how hard I really do work to like write things and put out issues and throw events. It's all a labor, and most of it for me is unpaid, even sometimes to my own detriment, like, you know. And so I just wish people, you know, saw that I am putting stuff in, and like I want to do the best that I can, and that I'm open to growing and having these conversations, and like even changing my opinion based off of new information, dare I say.
No, people hate it when you do that. People don't believe in that.
People don't believe in that.
That's like the tooth fairy.
Yeah, like ho ho down the chimney vibes.
Thinking about what you said about like, I want people to see me as my friends see me, but also holding that with like, they can't. Like,
they can't.
You are a projection of you. And if you all would be so lucky to really get to know Ava, truly. But it's also like this thing of like, it really might take a long time for us to get to a point where, or maybe it's not possible to get to a point where like humanity and the schema of digital world, internet, can be weighed together, because I think they might be inherently antithetical.
It's hard because I think, like I said, like so many of us are so isolated, like in our, because we're like in New York now. I'm like in New York. I just moved back, but yes. But a lot of us, like the internet is the only space that we have to like hash stuff out. Like it really is. But I do think maybe they're not antithetical, but the form of the internet that exists now and the people who are controlling it, I do think it's antithetical, because the internet is a product of spectacle. Everything on the internet is a spectacle. That is the way it functions. Like, you know, me saying, oh, you know, Nia is my friend and she did something nuanced that I want to address, is one thing that would not get much engagement. But I'm like, Nia is bad. Nia did this, this, and this, and, you know, we should not trust her, blah, blah, blah. That's a whole different thing. And that is something that the internet rewards, because it is being run and, you know, tracked, and all of our data and our conversations are being extracted by people who do not love us and do not have our best interests at heart. I think one thing that I've been thinking about as I've been mulling over these topics is how much I wish that we as queer and Black people had elders, had mentorship, had genuine support and mediators to help us navigate these problems. Like, even if it's on Zoom, you know, whatever, just someone to guide us through. Because I think a lot of the people who are doing this are like under 50. We're young. We don't have the experience that we need. And a lot of us are estranged from our families. A lot of us like don't have support outside of these networks of people who only understand language politics in one way that has been crafted by like literally Mark Zuckerberg. Like, it is not conducive to the worlds we want to build. And I think a lot of us are so much more focused on critique and on call out culture than actually imagining what a new future could look like, what it means, and what we all must sacrifice for that to happen. Because there's a lot of ego that needs to be left at the door, a lot of defensiveness that needs to be left at the door, myself included. Like, I be egotistical, I be defensive. Like, we human. But I think, you know, having a presence, a loving presence to guide us through that, and to really define like what words mean, what the words we're using means, and where these emotions are actually coming from, is necessary and important. And unfortunately, I don't think that a lot of that can happen through the internet, because the internet is, at the end of the day, a surveillance tool, and it's a propaganda tool. And the way that it works, it tracks all of our data and our conversations. So every time there's like a think piece or something, people scrambling to have discourse, the only person that's really benefiting are the Twitter CEOs. I think we came up in this era, at least I came up in this era of like Black girl magic, of like,
of course,
Black women being exceptional and like amazing and capable of like everything. And
I whip my hair back and forth.
Yes,
Willow
Eve Jean.
Yeah.
Like, if you were there, like, if you weren't, sorry, but like all of those things, just kind of like Black woman exceptionalism, which I love. I think that's true. Black women are magical and amazing, and I'm so proud to be aligned with my Blackness and Black people. And I'm always going to say that. At the same time, I think this has kind of morphed into this expectation that Black women or Black people who are in like positions of power, either through their audience or like community organizing positions, are being held to a nearly impossible standard. Because at the end of the day, like, we are not exceptional compared to any other human being on earth, and we need support. And sometimes we do need to be told about our shit and held accountable as well. But I've also seen this with a lot of Black women that I know who are like doing similar work, where they're just like, I'm anxious, I'm stressed, I can't go to a party without people interacting with me weirdly, or like just talking about the project that I'm doing or the video essay that I'm doing. And then I think it's very anxiety inducing and difficult to navigate the world feeling like you can't make a mistake. And that's something that I've been dealing with too, where I'm like, I just feel like I can't do anything wrong, or I can't even do anything that's perceived as wrong, or else I will get like some public call out or something that doesn't feel loving or doesn't feel very constructive, right? And I think that's made me really hesitant to do community work or to continue to put my trust in people where I don't actually know what they're thinking or how they're going to respond to me. Because I think so many of us are being dishonest with each other because we feel like the only place where we can have power is on the social media forums. So yeah, I think like I'm in a space where I'm definitely rethinking Ebony Tomatoes, what that looks like, because I just want to be regarded as like a person, and I want to be able to feel like I'm held and understood just a bit more fully in the communities that I'm seeking to live with and create with.
I also think it's like a cyclical dehumanization, you know, of Black women. It's like, damn. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Because I think that, you know, I was talking to my other friend, Taj, about this, and he was saying some months ago, he's like, white supremacy is everywhere. White supremacy is not limited to white people. White supremacy is not limited to non-Black people. In fact, I think that so many of us are so skilled in white supremacy because we've lived under it for generations, that I think the more marginalized you are, the more you understand the master's tools and the more ready you may be to utilize that to protect yourself, because we have not so far been taught another way. And I think we really need to grapple with like the cop inside of ourselves, even if
rooted in, just to jump on, like punishment, condemnation, like dogpiling or violence, like is that
absolutely the cop within us that has these urges and is scared and seeks to, you know, gain control over your environment through surveillance and through dogpiling, condemnation, all of these things. And again, not all harm is created equally. Like there are some situations where that absolutely is warranted, where it's like sometimes you gotta throw the stone, you must, like, and I'm not denying that, like, at all. And like, but there are gradations to it. It's not just, harm is not just one thing. Even that word is like very abstract, and we don't really have a clear definition on that as a community. I think we should also remember that throughout Black history, divide and conquer has been one of the biggest rules that the state and the government has used against us. Like even in the Black Panther Party, if y'all don't know COINTELPRO, look that up. It was like a counterterrorism organization within the FBI that basically incited rumors within the Black Panther Party and forged correspondence with other Black radical groups to make the leaders of the Black Panther Party paranoid and to stop trusting each other, which led to murders. It led to, basically, it was a really big contributing factor into why the Black Panther Party no longer exists. And all that was...
Of gossip?
Gossip, like they would literally, like the FBI would literally forge letters and send it to like Huey Newton or whatever and being like, this other Black radical said that.
This is some Libra shit. Like, that's not evil. Dark Libra. Bad.
Dark Libra. So yeah, COINTELPRO was literally like doing this stuff, and I can't help but think about that when I see these situations where, you know, it's called like lateral violence. And I don't, as much as I understand where it comes from, because honestly, I feel like as much as I've been hurt by white people and betrayed by white people, I've also felt some of those deepest digs from members of my own community.
Of course.
Which is like so painful and hard.
It hurts the most.
It hurts the most because you're like, wait, I thought we were like...
Oh, I guess we're not skin folk.
This topic has relevance and roots that touch everything from our current political climate to deeply niche discourses lesbians biannually bicker about on Twitter.com. Even Doja Cat's recent, now rescinded comments about Timothée Chalamet speak to this cultural complex. For context, Timothée made some comments about ballet and opera being dying arts that no one pays attention to.
I don't want to be working in ballet or opera or, things where it's like, hey, keep this thing alive, even though no one cares about this anymore. All respect to the ballet and opera people out there.
Only for the entire internet to then reveal they're actually all diehard connoisseurs. Hate it when that happens. Then Doja Cat jumped on the bandwagon, fanning the flames of his downfall.
Hey, by the way, opera is 400 years old. Ballet is 500 years old. Somebody named Timothée Chalamet had the nerve, big guy, by the way, had the nerve to say on camera that nobody cares about it. I'm sure you can walk into an opera theater right now, seats will be filled out, and nobody's saying a word as the performance is going because everybody has that much respect for it. There is an etiquette around opera. There is etiquette around ballet. It's amazing.
Only to later rescind her statement, saying, quote, I've never been to a ballet. I've never seen an opera, and I took it upon myself yesterday to kind of give it to the man because there's a culture based around outrage and things like that, and people want to feel like they're a part of something.
But what I was doing yesterday was virtue signaling because I wanted to connect. And I knew that Timothy's goof up was something that I could leverage in order for people to connect with me and fuck with me. And it's easy. It's like it's a modern way to garner clicks, likes, approval, and all kinds of things like that from people. And so I did that yesterday. And I didn't really think about why I was doing it.
And of course, she was subsequently dragged to hell. All this leads me to the question, how do we address harm in a culture where we can't genuinely engage with it? In All About Love by Bell Hooks, and yes, I'm rereading All About Love by Bell Hooks if that gives you any idea about my mental state right now, she states, as more people have found the courage to break through shame and speak about woundedness in their lives, we are now subjected to a mean-spirited cultural response where all talk of woundedness is mocked. The belittling of anyone's attempt to name a context within which they were wounded, were made a victim, is a form of shaming. It is psychological terrorism. Shaming breaks our hearts. All individuals who are genuinely seeking well-being within a healing context realize that it is important to that process not to make being a victim a stance of pride or a location from which to simply blame others. We need to speak our shame and our pain courageously in order to recover. End quote. So to address the title, this was the part of the video where I was going to talk about my past. As my channel's grown and my visibility in my real-life community has expanded, so has people's propensity to be in my business and act like they know me, to weigh accusations or theories or warped narratives around and about me under the guise of this faux moral purity I'm talking about, to paint me as crazy or unsafe. And in previous drafts of the script, I touch on things that have happened and parse through feelings of shame and accountability or reflection, because these are situations or people I knew that spanned years of my life, all that have long been addressed and over with, that people who were not there and frankly don't know me well, if at all, have taken it upon themselves to spread on the basis of ethics and morality. And despite my original inclination to want to defend my character, disseminate lies, and substantiate my humanity in the sense that, yes, I do in fact make mistakes and have flaws, but am I still allowed to live? Or instead, I'm literally just not. Because one, I think a large part of growing up is realizing and accepting the cruel truth that sometimes people just don't like you. And that's okay. I don't like some people. Some I feel justified in my negative feelings towards, and some it's just a vibe. And two, if people want to not like me, particularly some of these people who I've quite literally never spoken to, there's nothing I can do about that. And that's okay. Despite the whole content creator thing of it all, my goal is not actually to make everyone like me. If I wanted everyone to like me, I wouldn't touch half the topics I do with a 10-foot pole. See part 1. But my goal as a creator and as a person is to promote thought. It is to promote critique and discussion, even in the face of disagreement. It is to do something productive and maybe even good for my community and disseminate things in meaningful ways for what I feel is the greater good. And what I realized in trying to write a version of this video where I meander over these incredibly complex and personal experiences and bare my soul to my audience in defense of my honor is that the people saying that shit about me don't give a fuck about none of that. They do not care about community safety or praxis. They just don't like me. They don't want my side. They don't care about what actually happened. They don't care about an ambiguous pursuit of justice or recourse. They don't want to make peace. They don't even want to just wipe their hands, say fuck me, and move on with their lives. They just want to talk shit and act like they're not. And that ethos is starting to feel like an epidemic. I've been noticing so much of this progressive rumor mill shit happening with my friends, too. There's so much pointing and clickiness and social politics and groupthink that pretends and dresses up like productivity, like morality, that a lot of the time is just petty bullshit or semantics in a way that I think is specific to the lesbian community in certain ways, because we have all this language, this understanding of oppression, this idea of community to protect. I also think it's a very specifically Gen Z thing. We are the generation of, you actually can't say that. I actually won't do that. Consent, boundaries, trauma. We have words to describe and analyze and critique experiences that have long gone unexamined, which is good in a lot of ways, but has also caused us to lose the purity and humanness in just being a hater. People feel they need a moral reason to not like other people. In certain contexts, especially contexts online, people cannot just be stupid or obnoxious or annoying. They are harmful, manipulative, toxic. A great example for this on an even larger scale is trans lesbian, mother of gay leftist YouTube, and fellow Libra, ContraPoint's 2019 meta-commentary video essay, Cancellation, where she not only explores the semantics, projections, and logical fallacies around certain instances of cancellation, but also addresses her own day in gay Twitter court. It's a great watch that holds weight to this day, but the distinction she makes around being harmful and being harmed also adds a layer of nuance to our parallel arguments.
And so much of the negative response to that video is just pure emotion. I always hear, I don't care what you intended, trans people were hurt by that video. You hurt trans people. But here's the thing, just because you were hurt by content I made doesn't mean that the content is bad or that I'm victimizing you in some way. I'll give you an example. I did a stream a couple years ago with a BDSM and kink activist. And me and this kink activist were just casually discussing what DDLG is, what it isn't, when I noticed someone in the chat was starting to totally freak out. They were typing in all caps like, my abuser used DDLG to justify raping me. Why are you defending my abuser? I can't believe you'd betray me like this. Please stop taking my abuser's side. Please stop, I'm begging you. This was actually really fucking upsetting to me because this person was clearly in a lot of pain. They were having a panic attack because they were having a trauma trigger reaction to this conversation. And I kept telling them to leave the stream and take care of themselves, but they wouldn't do it. So I had to block them and then later get in touch and make sure they were okay. Now, was their pain very real? Yes. Was it triggered by the content I was streaming? Yes. But does that mean I did anything wrong? No. Is it wrong to talk about kink in contexts where it's clear you're going to be talking about kink? No. But when you produce content online that's going to be viewed by thousands or millions of people, there's always some people out there who are going to be hurt by it. So if you want to argue that a tweet or a video I made is somehow immoral, I think you need more of an argument than just people were hurt.
There's obviously so many layers and nuances to this depending on what is being addressed. I think my point is more so, is that what we're missing in online discourse discussion culture is that we actually all have done things wrong. Fun fact. And all I or you or literally anyone can do to address harm is learn from it and try to change and try to grow. And sometimes you get forgiveness. Sometimes you give forgiveness. Sometimes you don't. But that is how we move forward. That is praxis. And you don't have to do that. You literally don't. But don't act like you're for that if you're not. You don't owe anyone grace. You don't have to look at the bigger picture or add nuance or move with empathy. That is legal. I would say our government's even promoting it. Like, don't think. It's the American way. But that is my central grounded question for you amidst all this theory. What do you want? For yourself, for the world, for your community, for society, for your children's society? And how do your actions align with that? How does how you spend your time, where you put your body, where you put your money, where you put your mind, get you closer to the world you actually want to live in, more than just surviving and coping in a world you're fundamentally against? It feels just to tell people like Malavika to kill herself. It feels just to dehumanize people we don't know, to contort them into these silos of harm, capable of nothing else, because I would never do that. I don't want that here, not in my community. But it is here. It is here in your community. Do you want to genuinely address it? Do you want to interrogate it? Do you want to fix it? Try to? Because there's also an acknowledgement in this community of how many of the actions we condemn online with moral vitriol are actually products of or tied to our fucked up education system, poverty, trauma, abuse. Or do you just want to be outraged? Do you just want to be right, to feel smart, to feel vindicated, to feel powerful? I think often there is so much projection, shame, internal bullshit, LUDs, with nowhere productive to go. Anger or jealousy or bitterness or valid frustration, whatever it is, that just wants to talk, to pat itself on the back, to be praised, to be coddled, with no genuine goals, no productive outcomes, just to feel like we're doing something, to feel like we have control over something. And I'd gander, that's because the actual roots of why we do these things, the reason we weren't accepted, the reason we didn't feel hot or cool or whatever the fuck, the reason we're all so fucking angry is in reality caused by something much bigger, much crueler, that we have no control over and fear we never will. And that is something I personally refuse to accept. It is also important to remember this cultural normality and arrogant faux moral line of thinking will not spare you. It will be there ready to condemn you into the silo of harm with the rest of the impure. It is when we are ready to acknowledge that the silo of harm is the world, and we cannot cure harm or hurt or hate or anger with itself, no matter how academic the words we use to address it are, that maybe we can actually start fucking doing something. Maybe even something productive. Maybe even something good. But to circle back to me, all I'll say to my audience is that no one knows better than me what the fuck I've done wrong in my life. But those things have brought me right here and made me who I am today. And that's a person I'm proud of. And the person who makes these videos. So if you enjoy them, thank you. I have never gone on this channel and claimed to be a fucking lesbian saint. I'm getting on here and with my whole chest, telling you what I'm about, what I believe, what I want for myself and for my community, that I am absolutely a work in progress, but I'm also a lot more than that. I've absolutely made questionable decisions and taken shit to hell, absolutely. But I'm not a malicious person, and I'm kind, and I have good intentions, and I generally want to be better, and I try to be every day. And that's all I can give you, and I give it to you with no expectations. But if you enjoy my content, I guess this is my formal statement that I am a smart, cool, sexy, hot, deeply flawed, three-dimensional person. And my work does not exist in spite of those flaws. It is directly influenced by them, by all the harm that's been done to me, as well as all the harm I've done to others. And that does not make me inherently bad or irredeemable. It makes me just like you. It makes me human. So, to this pervasive moral quandary, I guess what I'll leave you with is that moral purity will not save you. Accountability, knowing yourself, knowing your flaws, owning them, growing from them, honesty. Honesty will save you. And that doesn't mean you're owed forgiveness or grace. All it means is you must be brave enough to confront your own humanity, your own fallibility. Enough so that you can see the same in others and hope some will offer the same to you.